Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, Chapter 4, and this morning we're doing text 25. So without further delay, we'll start it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunathira Vanachari Jamunathira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajagacharya Astottara Sati Sishimada Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajagacharya Astottara Sati Sishimada Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavind Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय Samaveda Bhakta Vindaki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Guru Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Namini. Namaste Vishnupada Prabhupada Siddharthani. Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namini. Narayana Namaskricha Narochevam Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Gudirayat Nasya Prayesu Abhatvesu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 25. It is also the last text for the chapter. Etad evatma bhurajan naradaya vipichyate vedagarbo vyadat sakshad yad aha hari atmanam. Etad evatma bhurajan naradaya vipichyate vedagarbo vyadat sakshad yat aha hari atmana etad ivatma bhurajan naradaya viprichyate vedagarbho vyadhat sakshad yad aha hari atmana. Hare Krishna. You can unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna.
एतत् एवात्मा भूराजन् नारदाय विप्रच्छते वेदगर्भो अभ्यदात् साक्षात् यद् आहरीरात्मन Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Please unmute yourself.
एत एत्वात्मा भूराजन् नारदाय विपृच्छते
Hare Krishna. You got to mute it in the middle of it somewhere, but somehow. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
एतवेदात्मभूराजन्नारदाय विपूज्यते वेदगर्भो विदात् साक्षात् यदाह हरिरात्मनः. Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Matsuki. Anyone else? Okay, let's do it word for word. Etat, on this matter. Eva, exactly. Atmabhu, the firstborn, Brahmaji. Rajan, my dear king. Naradaya, unto Narad Muni. Vipichyate, having inquired about it from Vedagarbha, one who is impregnated with Vedic knowledge from birth. Abhyadhat, apprised. Sakshat, directly. Yat aha, what he spoke. Hari, the Lord. Atmana, unto his own. Brahma. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narad, exactly apprised him on this subject, as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As soon as Brahma was born of the abdominal lotus petals of Vishnu, he was impregnated with Vedic knowledge, and therefore he is known as Vedagarbha, or a Vedantist from the embryo. Without Vedic knowledge or perfect infallible knowledge, no one can create anything. All scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. One can get all types of information from the Vedas, And as such, Brahma was impregnated with all perfect knowledge so that it was possible for him to create. Thus, Brahma knew the perfect description of creation as it was exactly apprised to him by the Supreme Lord Hari. Brahma, on being questioned by Narad, told Narada exactly what he had heard directly from the Lord. Narada again told exactly the same thing to Vyasa, and Vyasa also told Shukadeva exactly what he heard from Narada. And Shukadeva was going to repeat the same statements as he had heard them from Vyasa. That is the way of Vedic understanding. The language of the Vedas can be revealed only by the above mentioned disciplic succession and not otherwise. There is no use in theories. Knowledge must be factual. There are many things that are complicated, and one cannot understand them unless they are explained by one who knows. The Vedic knowledge is also very difficult to know and must be learned by the above mentioned system. Otherwise, it is not at all understood. Shukadeva Goswami, therefore, prayed for the mercy of the Lord so that he might be able to repeat the very same message that was spoken directly by the Lord to Brahma, or what was directly spoken by Brahma to Narad. Therefore, the statements of creation explained by Shukadeva Goswami are not at all, as the mundanist suggests, theoretical, but are perfectly correct. One who hears these messages and tries to assimilate them gets perfect information of the material creation. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second canto, fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Process of Creation. Om Gnati Mirandasya Gyana Gana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmugitam Jena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirveshisha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarini Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gurachise Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. English translation again. My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject, as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. So, Shukadeva Goswami is responding to a question by Maharaj Pariksit, and as he's asked so many questions, especially one that's very important for all of us. What's a dying person supposed to do? We all get to that point at some time, and we should know what we should do at that time when it comes. So, Shukadeva Goswami is responding to Maharaj Pariksit by saying, my dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, when Narada, who is Brahma's son, questioned him, Brahma then taught Narada, explained this same subject, as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son. The Lord's own son is Brahma. So we're talking about the Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, from whose navel Brahma came on a lotus petal. So that means Garbhodakshaya's son is Brahma. And this subject was brought up and it already has been explained. And actually, if we look at the purport, and we'll get to it in a moment. You'll see the disciplic succession and how the explanation came down. And some things can even be discussed about that. That's also important for us, but we'll get to that a little later. So this subject was spoken by the Lord to Brahma, and Brahma was questioned by Narada, and Brahma explained to Narada. So Brahma was the first one to hear it from Lord Vishnu. This subject, which subject? Fortunately, at the very end of this chapter, where we read, so I've kind of scrolled to that. That's in the Bhaktivedanta Purport, the second canto, fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Subject. The subject is the process of creation. That was the question asked by Maharaj Pariksit to Shukadeva Goswami. What is the Lord? Please explain the Lord's creative energy. That's how he put it. But it's all tied into the process of creation. Creative energy is for the creation. So the title of this chapter is the process of creation. Now, Lord Brahma explained it wonderfully because he heard from Lord Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada first talks about how Brahma was born. The lotus petal came from the abdomen of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Brahma was born from that. So when Brahma was born, he was also impregnated with Vedic knowledge. So he was called a Vedantist right from the embryo, right from birth. Now, very important point, the first point that Srila Prabhupada makes about, since we're talking about Vedanta, without Vedic knowledge or perfect, infallible knowledge, no one can create anything. So all scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. Now, some of us may begin to say, oh, is that the way it is? I've read a good bit about the Vedas, and I see some connections. But Srila Prabhupada is making a blanket statement. All scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. So then where do we put the category of research then? Scientists are doing research. Well, now, before we answer the question, we have to know what research means. If you're researching something, you're trying to find out something. And if you're trying to find out something, it means you don't know. Researchers don't look for things they already know. They talk about them, but they don't try to find out what's there. What they find, they will report, either in seminars, the way it is now, or in journals. After someone else reads it, that's been in that field, and acknowledges the sense that it makes, then it gets put in the journal as an article. But Srila Prabhupada says, without Vedic knowledge, or perfect and infallible, without that knowledge, no one can create anything. So Vedic knowledge describes how things came to be. Remember the question again. The question is, what is the creative energy of the Lord? This is being asked by Maharaj Pariksit to Shukadeva Goswami. So then, Srila Prabhupada is saying, Vedic science is perfect. And therefore, we can make the assertion that Vedic science is perfect and different from Kali Yuga science. Why? Because Kali Yuga science is based on assumptions. It's assumptions and then attempts to prove the assumptions correct or false. This is what's going on in research. And the assumptions begin a very nice, wonderful name. It's called hypothesis. It's just an assumption. I'm thinking that based on what I've observed here, this may be what is going on in the material energy. That's the assumption. And the assumption is called a hypothesis. Then they do experimentation to prove the assumption's validity. It may be valid, it may not be valid. So if it's not valid, then it's going to have to be thrown out. And if it is valid, then of course it becomes theory. Mm? And unfortunately, I hate to disappoint you, but I also tell you that even when it gets to that point where science is saying this is a theory, when it comes to actual practice, some of the results arrived at by the theory is not totally exactly proven by experimentation. You can get close to it, especially when it comes to certain numbers that they put out. They just look at a trend and say, okay, well, it's going this way, therefore, especially if they make it graphical. The graph, you can just simply extrapolate the line down to where it cuts one of the axes and say, okay, when all things end, it ends here. This is what Kali Yuga science is like. And I'm just doing the tongue in cheek because it's Kali Yuga science. Because sometimes it's not correct. Sometimes it's also just a trend that's made them arrive at that. Now, all of that's basically imperfect knowledge. But Vedic science is perfect. Year in, year out, what is proven or what is said in Vedic science is actually unchangeable. That's why Sri Prabhupada calls it infallible knowledge. And I have to say for my own self, I was very glad to come by Krishna consciousness and therefore Vedic knowledge. Because when I was in graduate school, doing a program in experimentation in chemistry, I asked this question. I had worked 4 years in experiments to write a thesis for doctorate. And I'm writing a thesis and I take my discussions of my numbers that I've done experiments over and over and over again to prove the numbers were correct according to the equipment that I was there at the time. And I give it to my supervisor and he looks at it, very well-renowned professor. He looks at it and throws it away. So you can't write this as part of your thesis. I'm going, why? Not, I didn't challenge him. It's just I'm a student, so I just need to know if he's not going to accept. He said, the way you've written it is not right. So I asked him to explain. Then he said, you're saying that from your experiment, this is the conclusion. This is happening, that's happening, that is happening, that is happening. In other words, I'm stating them as facts. And he says, you can't do that. You have to say that this is something that may be happening based on my data. May be happening, not is happening. So he's telling me that what I had concluded all these years that I've been working, we can't assume that it's perfect. And now Srila Prabhupada is saying that Vedic knowledge is perfect. When Vedic knowledge says that the size of the soul is 1,000 or 1/10,000 the tip of a hair, that's not going to be changed. That is the same dimensions. And it will repeat it over and over and over again, and Vedic knowledge will not change that fact. But numbers get thrown in science, Kali Yuga, that's why I call it Kali Yuga science. It's based on hypotheses, it's based on assumptions, and then scientific knowledge, they say it is scientific. And then the experiments. And the other thing, one of the things, the reasons why the numbers that are arrived at are not perfect is because the instrumentation that's used themselves, they have errors in them. They can only measure up to a certain point. And then there's uncertainty after a certain point of measuring. So if after a certain point there's uncertainty, how can the number be perfect? It can't. So that is the situation. So really what is going on is scientific theory, I'm talking about Kali Yuga now, scientific theory, and then real experiments to find out, especially if they want to put a product out. Engineers do that. Engineers are applied scientists. They want to put a product out. They will do the experiments to find out what the reality of it is. They know the theory, But they'll use the theory to start off as a starting point, and then what the experiment really gives them as the reality is what they make the product and put it out with. Now, I'll just say one more thing and then they'll leave this alone. I went for an interview with Duracell, the company that makes batteries. I had learned electrochemistry, which is the chemistry behind battery making, electrochemical cells. And so I went for an interview. And this man is, asking me all kinds of questions, my background and so on. I just finished graduate school and then looking for a job, and I went for an interview. And I was going to impress him with what I knew about batteries, electrochemical cells. And there was one equation by some German scientist that's quite well known. I had memorized it. And now, you have to impress them that you know some background based on what they do for their company. So I started talking about it, and I mentioned the equation because it was named after that guy. He's called Nernst. So according to the Nernst equation, and he immediately stopped me. He says, I know about Nernst equation. Then he says, it doesn't work here. Now, Duracell, they make the batteries. And he says, the equation that describes the voltage in the batteries does not work here. But that's what's being taught in the school. So, go figure for what it's worth. So material science is not perfect because the instrumentation used for getting the numbers or whatever they arrive at are not perfect. They have errors in them. And Vedic knowledge is always perfect. So that is the situation. And Ajita Papa says, from the Vedas, you can get all kinds of information. Yes, all kinds of information about astrology, about biology, about chemistry, about mathematics. They're all in the Vedas. Astrology, for example, the planets, each one is separated for the one next to it by 1,600,000 miles. That the circumference of this planet that we live in, not the circumference, but the diameter of the planet that we're living in, I mean, the universe that we live in now, is 4 billion miles. See, science does not have instrumentation to measure that kind of number. How many types of fish, aquatics, in the whole material creation? 900,000. How many trees and plants? 2 million. How many insects and reptiles? 1,100,000. How many birds? 1 million. How many animals? 3 million. How many human types? 400,000. Those are all factual numbers. But in the Vedas, science cannot, there's no way they're going to go through the whole, all planets, all universe. They don't even know how many planets are in one universe, much less find out the kind of living entities classified like that. But Vedas has it. In biology, conception, when they are twins in the womb, when it comes to birth, for humans especially, the child that comes out first, many people have made the mistake to say that child that comes out first was the one that was conceived first. Veda says exactly the opposite. It's the younger one that comes out first. And then the older one, just by a few, very short time between the twins, he comes out later. Now, it's only lately that science is beginning to accept it. But it's been in the Vedas all this time. And there's chemistry, there's math, there's so many things in there, in the Vedas. So Brahma was impregnated with all of this perfect knowledge, making it possible for him to create. So the Vedas is spoken from one personality to another, to another, to another, So it's like a line of instructing spiritual masters, Shiksha Gurus, beginning from the Lord himself, who impregnated Brahma with the knowledge of the Vedas, and Brahma instructed Narad, and Narad instructed Vyasadeva, who was actually writing the Vedas. Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as it's stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, he was dissatisfied after he had written only a lot of things about the karmakandic aspect of life. And it's true, it's all part of material energy. And he wasn't pleased. So then Narad instructed him, but you haven't written about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, upon, of course, Narad also knew because he had heard from his father Brahma. So with the guidance, then the wonderful parts of the Vedas, especially the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are talking about now, came to being. Veda is knowledge, and Anta is last or the ultimate. So Vedanta is the ultimate knowledge, and it's factual. And if anything is done by anyone about Vedas trying to distort it, then the Lord will actually appear and set things straight. Sometimes the demons try to change things. As Srila Prabhupada has talked about so many times, the Mayavadis, they're looking at certain way of living, and when they describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they say, oh, he's impersonal. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has come to the earth. Oh, when he comes to the earth, according to the Mayavadis, he takes a body then, a physical body. Krishna is not physical. It's separated energy is physical, material energy. But he is spirit, and he always remains spirit. So that assertion by Mayavad is not right. But Krishna says he reserves the right to use his curtain of internal energy to cover identity of himself for those who don't believe in him and those who don't take the words of the Vedas seriously and come up with their own assumptions. Then they'll never know who he is. In other words, we have our independence. So with our independence, we can assume what we want to assume. But the Lord is a supreme independent. And then he says that if you're not going to surrender to me but come up with all kinds of assumptions, then I will leave you ignorant. I will cover myself and you won't get to know me. Krishna reveals himself only when we do loving devotional service unto him. So even when we start with this instructions on how to serve, and we begin to follow the instructions, which is a smart thing to do. So the devotion service through instruction, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. Then fortunately, our own personality is wired in such a way that when we repeat some things, it becomes a habit. Not that we like it, it just becomes a habit. That means we do it without thinking much. But the thing about Krishna consciousness is after we develop a habit, then Krishna sweetens the whole process because the Paramatma is already in our heart. So as we're working, he's also rewarding. As all living entities surrender unto me, especially humans, we have the highest intelligence compared to the others, I reward accordingly. Everybody is on my path, O Arjuna. Everybody. Because Krishna is the source of both material and spiritual. And so you cannot do anything outside of Krishna's energies. It's not possible. It is not possible. Existence of anything depends on Krishna. Because he's the source of things that are material and things that are spiritual. He says everything emanates from me. So since everything emanates from me, he says those who are wise They surrendered to me and served me with all their hearts. Now, he is the last. He is the ultimate. He is the source of, and he's all pervading, and he's the most energetic and the most attractive. Where else do we need to go? Good sense tells us go nowhere else. Go to Krishna. Go to Krishna means we surrender to Krishna and we take instructions as he instructs that we do. He has set out for us conditioned souls a very nice process, not just loving devotional service, but how to do it through the instructions of the spiritual master, literally giving us guides that tell us what to and what not to so that we become better. Mm-hmm. And so the process has been given an analogy. Radha Swami made one lecture and he was mentioning. Sometimes the bodies seem to, oh, well, I came to Krishna consciousness and there's this difficulty and that difficulty and so on. But the difficulties give us lessons to learn. And the lessons, if we pray about it, we'll find them. Krishna will expose the lessons so we get to know. And from the lessons, we become better people. So Radha Swami gave an analogy that if the spiritual master is our guide, then the spiritual master wants to offer a purified devotee consciousness. That is, a person who understands Krishna consciousness, he's offerable as a disciple to the spiritual master's guru, who would offer to his guru, who offers to guru. And now, at the end, this person will be at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, Radha Krishna, a purified person. So the purification process shouldn't be looked at as a difficult process, and this comes and this comes and that comes. Radha Swami gave the analogy to look at ourselves as a vegetable. Now, it's not demeaning now. Give me how to finish the whole analogy. And an expert cook, the expert cook is a spiritual master, is cooking to offer to the Lord. We're so used to it. We know we put our vegetables in there and grains and so on, and we cook and then we offer to the Lord. But now put ourselves in that situation of the grains or vegetables especially. What happens? Before the vegetable goes in the pan, you have to cut it. You have to wash it. Sometimes you have to peel some of the grains part of it. So many things we have to do. Cut at different sizes. Now just think about the process of cutting. If you get cut, will that be pleasant? Of course not. Cuts hurt a little bit. We are put in the pan, and then we just get swirled around. We are the vegetables now, swirled around, and there's heat underneath us. And then there's cutting going on. And then finally, we blend nicely into nice food stuff, and then it gets offered to Krishna. This is the process that we go through. This is purification. So the wonderful analogy that Maharaj gave. So while we're being cut, while we're being washed, while we're being fried, all of those things will make us uncomfortable. Those are the purification processes that we're going through. But the end result is very nice and very offerable to the Lord. So that's what a devotee goes through. And since it's like that, anytime that challenges come, we should understand that we're being purified. We're being washed of the dirt that's on us, especially on our hearts, and different processes are being applied to us. Therefore, if we resist the process of purification, we will remain dirty and not offerable to the Lord. And this is what happens. We all have a specific amount of time to stay here. We will breathe our last breath, and if we didn't get purified properly, we have to take another birth. Come through, continue the purification process in another lifetime, put in a different situation. So while we are learning, Vedas is being taught to us So we can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One of the things we need to know is that this is all an applied process. We get to know it so that we apply it. Therefore, for anyone that knows a lot but does not apply it, then that person is not really in the category of being a devotee. That person is a knowledgeable person. That's called jnani. We call a spade a spade. You know when you don't apply, you're a jnani. You may think you're a devotee because you read about devotion, but you're not living it. So you're really not a devotee. You're a jnani. If I do that, I'm a jnani. But we're supposed to be bhaktas. And so bhakti is applied. Love is a feeling that you have, but it makes you do things for your beloved. And those things that we do is action. How can somebody say, oh, I know that I love this person, but I don't do anything for them. I just know I love them. How can they even know or believe that you love them? You have that knowledge. I'm convinced I love this person, but I don't do anything for them. So what kind of love is that? So it all is based on action. And that's why it is important to be trained, not just have knowledge, but to be trained in what to do. That's why doctors are never allowed to deal with patients until they've gone through the training, after they've gotten the knowledge. Then they get trained, called a residency. Get trained, you do this, based on this knowledge that they've taught. Now, this is how you work on the patient. Then they have the experience. So basically, if a person has a lot of knowledge, but not much experience, not trained, they can't be a very useful devotee. They really can't. They may think whatever they want to think, have just overloaded with knowledge. They can't be a good devotee. They will act literally. And it happens to a lot of devotees, especially if the ego is very high. People will just basically have a lot of knowledge and they can preach because they can just put the knowledge out, regurgitate it. I mean, we do that all the time. Don't we learn stuff and then go to exams and spill it out? It's nothing new. But when it comes to actual action based on the situation, because they have not been trained, the person that's not trained will act like a karmi, even though they're loaded with all this knowledge, but there is a disconnect between the knowledge and how to apply it. So the process of creation may be there, which is wonderful, and it's going to be explained. Much of it will come from the chapters coming up, because that's what Maharaj Pariksit asked Shukadeva Goswami, and he's going to begin to explain. When Shukadeva Goswami, I'll take you back a little bit, when Shukadeva Goswami was asked that question, he first gave all praises to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. And that's about the last 5, 6 or so texts that we read. And that is the proper way the pure devotees go about, way of answering questions connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They'll praise him first, and then they'll get to the answers. So the answers are in the first of, in chapter 4, we just ended chapter 4. So chapter 5, the beginning, and it was one after another. There will be the answers given by Shukadeva Goswami in answer to the question of the creative energy by Krishna that Maharaj Pariksit asked. So the mercy of the Lord was first invoked by Shukadeva Goswami, and that's our first lesson. Whenever we got to do something, we should pray for the mercy of the Lord by saying that, dear Lord, we dedicate this day and the activities of this day to you. And then we start working. Because if we do that, and all prayers are heard, we pray that kind of prayer, then life will go on. It will seem to everybody that we're doing what we normally do. Nobody will know the difference. But the Lord knows the difference. And the person that is a devotee that's prayed like that also knows the difference, because they believe that whatever happens, expected, unexpected, it's all based on the mercy of the Lord, and the Lord is directing that person. That is the way we should live our lives, dedicating every single day to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not matter you're in the business, you're an employee, you're a homemaker, whatever. That is a consciousness we should have, because that consciousness helps us to go through the day in a very, very, very wonderful way. Many, many situations happening that we couldn't have figured out ourselves. Some of the things that may be just repetitive, so we know about. But there will be other things too, and even other people, and sometimes other contact information that will come through during the day, and it will all be based on the mercy of the Lord. The mercy of the Lord in terms of the Lord showing how he loves us. We will see that the difficulties that we face are actually difficulties, situations with lessons in there for us to learn. And if we learn them, then we get cooked properly by the Guru, and therefore we'll be ready to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll be making ourselves qualified as we go on. So the Lord and Vedas is about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 15, which is called Yoga of the Supreme Person. In text 15, Krishna says, Savasya chaham hridisha nivishto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So we like to remember, and we like to have knowledge. The person that's more informed understands and works at things with better commitment to it because of the knowledge they have. Remembering, I don't have to go into details about it. But what about forgetfulness? Is forgetfulness good? Oh, but if we forget, then sometimes it's embarrassing and so on. Krishna does things all so well. Sometimes forgetfulness is a way to bring our attention to something that we've done that we shouldn't have done. Sometimes it's a quick reaction, forgetfulness. But forgetfulness has great, great, great positive implications for us. Now, what do we mean? We know that we're not these bodies. And we also know that here in the material world, we've been through 7 lifetimes. We also know that from one lifetime to another, we don't remember what we were doing in the previous life. But if we don't remember, that means we have forgotten. Again, call a spade a spade. We don't remember even our lifetime, this particular lifetime, when we were babies and when we were toddlers, what we did. But let's just stay with the previous life. We don't. But the previous life, we don't remember, but the previous lives have shaped us into who we have become. We call it karma. Now, we are in the material world, which means we're not in the spiritual world. Now, that may seem like an empty statement, but it has great, great connection to forgetfulness. We are in the material world. Material world people are those who have not been purified enough, and they're living with material energy and making all kinds of mistakes and trying to enjoy material sense gratification at their own demise, whether they know it or not. This is life in the material world. And so some of the things that we do, if we haven't gone back to the spiritual world, it means we did some things wrong and never made it back. Even if we knew Krishna at the time, we didn't make it back to the spiritual world. Now, so in this lifetime, now I begin to think about a situation. If Krishna made us remember everything that we did in a previous life, and we know that we didn't go back to the spiritual world, that means we did a lot of things that were negative, not based on the spiritual rule of law. Some of the things that we may have done were actual crimes, but we've done it in the previous life. So let's say Krishna says, okay, everybody can remember the previous lives, what they did. You know what's going to happen to us? Suppose I found out that I was a murderer. I've heard Hitler killed 6 million Jews, but I killed about 25 people. You know how that's going to affect me if I ever got to know about that? Would I feel good about myself? Maybe I stole somebody's property. Maybe I went with somebody else's spouse. These are all in the previous life. Maybe I was involved in incest. It's all in the previous life. If Krishna made us remember those things, how are we going to live with ourselves? Finding out how much of a criminal we are. So how can we say the forgetfulness is bad? In this situation, it's actually helpful. Better we don't remember because we are still conditioned souls. And if we are conditioned souls, we've done some horrible things in previous lives. So Krishna gives us a mercy by not letting us remember. So from him comes remembrance, from him comes knowledge, and it better be good for us to think it comes. Forgetfulness is also part of it, especially based on our previous lives that we didn't make it back to the spiritual world because we were still criminals. So forgetfulness is not as bad as we think. When we surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he will help us in our remembrance, especially when we want to remember something. He will do it in a very timely way. I have one story about that, and then we'll break for questions. Again, it happened in India, in Chowpatty area. So there was this devotee taking this sadhana bhakti very seriously. He was also a student at IIT. And there were exams coming up. And this was exams people get very much anxiety about preparing for it. Spend hours and hours, all students studying very hard, want to do very well. This devotee, and you know what devotee life is. You have to devote some time, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to chant minimum of 16 rounds. He's an initiated devotee. So he was doing that. But every bit of time that was needed to study, that was his consideration too, because exams are coming. But this guy never compromised his service and his chanting, even at the time that he was preparing. Now, what happened? The exams, him and his classmates, many of them non-devotees, at IIT, they did the exams, and they found out that he got the best grade. He got the best grade. Now, Ranama did not know about this. This also happened in Chowpatty. Later on, Maharaj was told about it, and he preached, and that's how I heard about it. This guy was the one that did the best in the exams. So the next weekend, the following weekend, Maharaj came. There were a lot of new faces from IIT. They had come to the Chowpatty temple. And they were welcomed nicely and so on. And when the devotees talked to them, they found out that most of them were classmates of this particular devotee that actually scored the best. All of these was not known until the students themselves spoke up. And they explained, as things were being asked of them in conversation, that they had come to the temple because this one guy had done so well. And we know that he is in this particular temple. Therefore, we also want to come to this temple to find out what it is that we have to do to be as good as this guy, because we all studied so hard. And he got the best grade. So they had also come, whatever secret that makes people do well, that is in Chowpatty, they want to know about it. Of course, for devotees, that's laughable because what do? We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But the underlying fact about this is Krishna made that particular devotee because he stayed with his sadhana bhakti and never compromised it, even in preparing for the test. Krishna helped him, with adequate remembrance to the point that he did better than even his classmates. So Krishna consciousness is best, and the way we surrender also determines how much Krishna helps us. So yes, Vedas has factual information, no assumptions that the researchers try to do with assumptions. They call hypotheses. Vedas are direct. All kinds of subjects are in the Vedas. So it's from the Vedas that the rest of the knowledge, applied knowledge, comes out. And if we stay with the process, especially learn how to apply, and believe me, when it comes to training, we should never feel that I know, and therefore I won't listen to anybody. Even in the Vedas, it's there. In the 11th canto, 8th chapter, the Avadut Brahman learned from 24 gurus. And they were not 24 human beings. Only a couple of them were human beings. And even though they were not living a lifestyle that was wonderful. The girl that's, cooking, and he has bangles, and they're banging so much, making all kinds of noise. So he broke the bangles to the point where they weren't making noise anymore. Clatter, gossip. That's what we learned from it. In another situation, a prostitute. But this Avadut Brahman learned a lot of lessons, valuable lessons. So when he said 24 gurus, 24 situations and living entities, and what he learned from them. And one bit of information about the Avadut Brahman, later on in the Shastra, it's revealed. He's actually the Lord, Dattatreya. Dattatreya is the Avadut Brahman. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And time has just flown by without me realizing it's already 9 o'clock. But anyway, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask some questions, share some realizations, or take home, connect the dots as you like. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, August
I'm fine, Brother Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you for the pastimes, especially I think one of my pastime, one of the analogy that I really like and really resonated with me is the pastime of the cooking,
that's what I was, analogy.
Yeah, because why it resonated with me so nicely and why it's really very strong is, we are being cooked in this material world. I mean, because I'm cooking right now. I guess so that's why I am, it's very strong for me because, here am I cooking for Prabhupada's disappearance lunch offering. And I'm thinking, I'm, in this pot, I'm putting all the masalas and the spices, and in the material world, the masalas and the spices are challenges that are being thrown at us in this hot oil of material energy, And then here I'm putting all the veggies and stirring, and the poor veggies are being hit against the wall of the pot. And I'm thinking, yeah, we are too. We are being hit against the wall. So here am I cooking, and I'm thinking, and I'm actually imagining myself in this pot being, cooked by some big, spoon, ladle, and tossed here and there, and tossed here and there, with no voice. Like we don't hear the cabbage or the potatoes or the spinach or the paneer crying in the pot. Why are you pushing me? Why are you hitting me against the wall of the pot? But that's what we are going to in the material world. We are being kicked around like a football, like a soccer ball, We are being kicked around, tossed around against every wall. The only thing is that in the material world, the wall is so-called invisible, but because we can't see because of our, because we are so covered up with ignorance, Prabhupada says that we can't see, but we are being tossed. Every single moment, every single day, we are being tossed around in this pot of material energy, kicked, and And it's only the spiritual master that can take us out of this boiling or this, masala pot or what pot we were cooking in, and save us. And yeah, that was a really powerful analogy. Thank you for sharing that. Because like I said, I think, at least for me, the more we think of us being in this pot, being kicked around, being tossed around, being pushed around, I hope that will help us to have the strong desire to find a way of how to get out of this pot where we're being pushed and kicked around by this huge ladle spoon. But yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for, bringing up, point up again. Let me just look at it from another angle, if I may. There is the devotee life and the challenges that come. That was the analogy that Swami was giving. That yes, the challenges come, but the spiritual master is expert at cooking the vegetables, and the vegetables feel the heat, and when they get cut up in different particular shapes and so on, all of that. But when we submit to the spiritual master, then the spiritual master cleans us up. So that is the purification process. And when it's finished, we can be offered nicely because we become nicely cooked and we can be offered. The parts of what you described about the material world and its challenges, that's also definitely valid. But when you live a material life, that there's no spiritual master. There's just you and the dirt, and you're being kicked around and tossed around in the dirt. And finally, we just get torn apart. That's not like the situation where the spiritual master takes us and cuts us up and washes us and puts us, even though that process of purification, the cooking also can be hurtful to us physically, but we are learning from it. So in the material world, when the spiritual master is not around, then we don't get cooked. We get tossed around badly in the material energy. And in the end, we wind up someplace else. And the process continues. But someplace else means next life. And the process continues. So when we are under the guidance of the spiritual master, there will be some challenges, but it is all guided. Answers are given. Ways to look at it are given. And one way to look at some that sometimes happens to us is a general. It's a very important way to look at it also that my spiritual master, Bhakti Maharaj, shared with us. Sometimes when we go and we don't understand why, maybe a very, very, very debilitating disease. It's really, really, really giving us problems in our material life. And you say, but Krishna, why? Why am I going through this? A devotee's life is not initiated, so it's not based on karma, so why am I going through this? Bhakti Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, offered one suggestion, a way to look at it. And it helps a lot of devotees, that's why we put it out. Look at it as you may not know why things have happened to you, but you are the recipient of the challenges or even the pain that comes from that particular situation. Later in life, if somebody else goes through a similar situation, because you've had the experience of it, you would be in a much better situation, better position to guide them as to how to deal with that situation and how to get out of it. Those with experience are the best teachers. So sometimes challenges come for us to be equipped to help later on others who may go through similar challenge. Many, many times those bodies who come initially and then they begin to see, okay, there's some needy bodies, they open up some things and they talk about some challenges that they're having. And then we reassure them it's nothing new. One example, I've just started chanting, but I find that if I'm chanting and my mind is on here and here and here, the person that's new to chanting getting so much anxiety, why is it that my mind is not steady when I'm chanting? The response to it is the calming response. The consoling response is nothing new. A lot of devotees go through that. Then you begin to explain what can be done and so on. The more use of the senses, the more focus you get. You speak out louder rather than chant silently. You have, all those examples come. But because the person that's being talked to, that's been in it for a while, has the experience that a new person thinks everything is going wrong because I'm not doing it properly. But this is what happens. So sometimes the experience that Krishna puts us through so that we'll be able to help others. Hare Krishna. Any other comments or final questions? If not, then we'll thank you very much for coming on and have a nice Krishna. Today is the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. If you can get to a temple in Harrisburg, definitely having a program that starts at 6. And Srila Prabhupada around 7:30 is when he left his body. There will be Anilo prayers and so on. There's a nice program set up for this evening. If you can come, that would be nice. Hare Krishna.
Yes, and if I could just request devotees that that today is a very special day, and we have said this, many times, and it doesn't hurt to repeat how important it is that we all come together this evening at 6 o'clock at the temple to glorify and serve Srila Prabhupada, who was the founder Acharya, and forever, ever, ever will be the one and only founder Acharya for ISKCON. And it's only by the mercy, purely by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, that we have what we have today in Krishna consciousness. And it's very important that we come together to this evening to hear from Srila Prabhupada, to glorify him, and to take shelter of him and take his darshan, his mercy, and his blessing. So please give at least 2 hours of your time this evening and come to the temple and join us in glorifying the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada and surrendering ourselves to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai. Thank you very much for coming. Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripa suniva eva chaptitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nupamataji, thank you. Hare Krishna. I know you sent the text. I just want to acknowledge that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Guru.
Hare Krishna. Bless you, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Bless.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Someone today. Bless you, Prabhupada.
Hare